All right, there you have it, Hezekiah Walker. He is my help, all of my help. Once again, we're so delighted that you've joined us this morning on this thankful Thursday morning. This is the day that the Lord has made. Certainly, we shall rejoice and be glad in it. Minister Vonda Morton, Darlene O'Neill, good morning to you. And once again, if I missed anyone, let me say good morning to you as well. I'm so honored all the time when you decide to pop in and share with us on this wonderful platform. Praise God. Those of you that are connecting for the very first time, this is Morning Mocha, where I, your host, Dr. Tony D. Coggins, I just share a little practical wisdom based on biblical principles to help you navigate through life from one day to the next. Just in case you're wondering, this is not a preaching platform, although I must admit every now and then I do get a little bit preachy. And you have to give me a pass on that one because that's who I am. That's what I do. But just so you know, I'm just looking to find ways to add value to the lives of people by sharing words of wisdom, again, through biblical principles that I know will be a blessing to our viewers and our listeners. There's so many other platforms that you could be on right now. I understand that. And some of which probably you might deem to be a little better than this, but I'm okay with that. But I do what I do by the grace of God and by the gifting that God has given me. Jackie Davis Watkins, Donna Stevenson, Stephanie Smith, Donna Sanders, good morning to each and every one of you. Well, I'm not going to belabor the time. Well, wait. I got to pause for the call. Something just happened. Y'all know what just happened. Lady Ann just popped in. Y'all know I have to recognize her each and every time she jumps in with us, because I'm always grateful that my wife deems it a good thing to pop in to see what I'm sharing. You know, sometimes when people are close to you, they can kind of take you for granted and they can become somewhat not interested in things you have to say. And she might think, and every now and then when she wants to kind of ruffle my feathers, she'll say stuff like, I hear you all the time. But I hope she never gets tired of my voice. Yeah, it's the only one I've got. But again, yes, sweetie, I love you too bunches. I love you so much. Thank you once again. I know that was for me. That had to be for me. Okay, but I want to jump right into what we want to talk about today. I want to ask you, I want you to consider this question. What contributions are you making toward building a better society? Yeah, I'll give it to you again. What contributions are you making toward building a better society? Now, I'm sure that most all of us would love to live in a perfect world. But unfortunately, such is likely to never be the case. The world in which we live in is flawed and full of flawed people. That is a reality. It's also a reality that we must be resolved to live in this world. We must be resolved to live in this world with that reality being the case. The world is flawed. The people in the world are flawed. But that doesn't mean that it is impossible for us to do what we can to make things better. I know for some of us, the question is, whose responsibility is it to make things better? Okay, that's a good question. It's a question worth considering. Now, here's where I land on that question. I'm convinced that each and every one of us have a role to play in helping to improve the world in which we live. The first thing we must realize is that whether we like it or not, we are all interconnected with one another in one way or another. I know there is a serious divide between human beings by reason of race, creed, color, religious persuasion, and the like. You name it. We've built or created divides or gaps that separate us, that causes us to see more that is different between us than what is really most common um, about us. But the one commonality among every one of us who occupy space here in the earth, and that is our humanity. We can't get by the fact that we are all human beings. Furthermore, we all have been placed on this planet called Earth, wherein we all are regulated to finding a way to coexist as best we can. It's sad that as intelligent as we are, as creatures of God, as human beings, that it seems so difficult, and it's an ongoing struggle just for us as people, as human beings, simply to find a way to coexist in peace, to coexist in love. We struggle so much with that. And I know that a lot of it stems from our differences, the cultures that we were brought up in, the cultures that are presently surrounding us, the cultures we have inserted ourselves into, the color of our skin, our beliefs, and all of that. I know that those are the elements that ultimately separate us from one another. But I believe, once again, I'm convinced that with all this intelligence that God has placed in us, with all of this intellectual capacity and ability to think and to reason, we definitely, as a human society, ought to be able to find ways where we can exist in the same space, occupy the same space, and be able to get along peaceably with one another. See, the challenge with us all coexisting in the earth is that there are individuals who live with their only interest being in themselves. Their only concern is for themselves. They are convinced that the only space that they should give serious consideration to is the space in which they occupy. And that's where the divide occurs. It occurs at the point of selfishness. The divide occurs at the point of loss of compassion for one another. It occurs at the point of loss of sensitivity toward the plight of one another. Anytime we only become concerned with what is attached to or what has the ability to affect our little worlds, that's when you lose consideration and compassion for everyone else around us. And here's what's sad. That doesn't just occur among people who have different colors of skin or different religious beliefs, or people that come from different cultures. But sometimes we can create our own little worlds and live in our own little silos, right while we're right in the midst of the culture that we have become accustomed to. We develop our little circles. And once we develop our little circles, the people within our circles are the only ones we seem to care about. But then we wonder why our world, our society, we as a people seem to always be going sideways? Why everything concerning our lives, concerning the world in which we live, the world in which we have entrenched ourselves, why do things seem to keep going sideways? The world in which we live in its present state, it's in its present state simply because people have stopped caring about others as much as they used to. At least that's one of the reasons why. I mean, think about it. At least I grew up in a time, as when I can recall from my childhood, wherein it seemed like people genuinely cared about one another. People in the community looked out for one another. Now, I'm not by any means suggesting that at the time we were living in a perfect society. We certainly were not. Back then we had our issues, we had our troubles, but for the most part, people showed a sense of care, concern, and compassion for one another. We were willing to help one another. We were quicker about coming to the aid of one another when we found one another, other people rather, in trouble and in serious need of help or assistance. That simply is just not the case anymore. As a matter of fact, it's easy, so easy nowadays, for people to be in distress, and several people will just pass them by, knowing that they need help. Now, once again, I know the world has changed. Society has changed drastically. People do all kinds of things to take advantage of other people. People have been known to pretend that they're broken down and needing assistance. And when a good Samaritan stops to give that individual assistance, that good Samaritan ultimately becomes the victim of a robbery. And some people have actually lost their lives trying to be a good Samaritan. And that's sad. And so we're skeptical now. We don't trust people the way that people would trust people in past decades. Oh Lord, y'all forgive me this morning. It seems like my brain hasn't started working like I wanted to just yet. So just bear with me, and hopefully as I get a little bit more warmed up, I'll be a little bit more clear with the message here. I hope I'm connecting with you, though. I hope you're starting to already get the message that, of course, our world is in a world of hurt, and something needs to occur. Things need to change where we start to turn this situation around and be able to see a little light at the end of the tunnel. Again, I understand we will never be able to create or produce a perfect society. That issue was set in stone at the beginning of time, back in the garden, when Adam and Eve sinned. It brought sin into the world. Sin complicates everything. Sin is what has turned our world upside down, and seems like everything is topsy-turvy. You know, we'll never be able to get rid of this sin issue. The only thing that we could do is do all that we can to help influence other people around us, people within our circles, influence them in a positive way, and pray that, I can say this on this platform because I know that a lot of our viewers are Christians. We can pray that many more people get introduced to the Lord Jesus Christ and accept him as Lord and Savior, and begin to live according to his word, according to his teachings. But I believe another reason why our world is in the state that it's in is because people have stopped believing that they can make a positive impact on their society. I just believe that. And therein lies the tragedy. People have stopped believing. They have stopped believing in themselves. They have stopped believing in other people. People have stopped believing in their power to influence others in a positive and a productive manner. Listen, whenever a person stops believing in themselves, then they have negated their power and ability to affect change. So let's just start right there. I want to challenge you, if you're that person who has literally stopped believing in yourself, if you have stopped believing or you've lost any sense of confidence or hope in your ability or power to impact people in a positive manner, I want to challenge you to reverse that today. I want to challenge you to once again start to believe in yourself. I want you to start today to once again at least start to make an attempt to even believe in other people. Now, in order for you to be able to be comfortable with believing in other people, you have to be a person who can identify good character. And I'm convinced that the only way that you can truly identify good character is that you must possess good character. I remember when we were children, and there were times we would say certain things, negative things about each other, call each other names or whatever. And the classic response when someone would say something negative to you or call you a bad name, the classic response used to be, "It takes one to know one." Y'all remember that? Using that response? If a person, say for instance, called you an idiot, your response would be, "Well, it takes one to know one." You must really know what an idiot looks like and how an idiot operates, because you yourself must be an idiot. That may not all the way be applicable or true, but that's the example that I've thrown out there, and I think you can relate to that. What am I simply trying to tell you? The best way for you to know people of good character is that you must be a person of good character. You develop your character, you're able to identify people who have great character, and you feel comfortable with trusting that person whom you have identified as having a good or even great character. And once you've identified these people, you become more comfortable attempting to work with these people, or you feeling as though you have someone that you can pour into, but who in turn can pour into you. You have that relationship wherein iron is sharpening iron. Once again, I think one of the problems that we have as a people is that we've become too isolated. I mentioned earlier that some of us literally live in these silos in which we block everything and everyone around us out. But what we need to do is to become more open and more connected with other people, and get back to learning how to build wholesome relationships, meaningful relationships, productive relationships, the kind of relationships wherein the people within the relationship don't have a problem trying to help build one another up rather than tearing one another down. Does that make sense? Does that really make sense? But again, I reemphasize the fact that it is so important that you start to believe in yourself. Don't be that person that goes from one day to the next simply existing, being that individual that more or less is just taking up space or occupying a space. I think it's kind of bad for me to put it like this, taking up space, because that kind of implies that you might be insignificant, but none of you are insignificant. I don't care who you are. Doesn't matter where what your background is, where you've come from. Doesn't matter what you have or have not accomplished in life. You are significant. You are relevant. And I truly believe that each and every one of you that's viewing this session right now, you have the power, the ability to make a positive impact and influence someone's life to the degree that they become encouraged to make a positive contribution to life, to their society, to the world as well. In this present state in which we live, this society that we live in is in desperate need of change. And I'm talking about change for the better. Now, I know, again, I'm not naive. I know when I make reference to change for the better, that's opening it up to individuals' subjectivity. In other words, the interpretation of that statement is subject to an individual's perception. Let me make it a little plainer. What may be better for some may not be better for others. What some people would love to see, others definitely do not want to see. I personally, I think from my humbled perspective and in my humbled opinion, I think our society has gone way too far with regards to our liberties, if you will. People can nowadays do just about whatever it is they want to do. And they've convinced themselves that their actions shouldn't suffer any consequences or repercussions. I've been saying for years, I've been literally saying this for years. As a matter of fact, I can't even remember when I first started saying this, but I'm truly convinced that what a lot of people in this world would love to have, and that is to have a lawless society or to live in a lawless society where there are no constraints, there are no restrictions, there are no boundaries. People are just free to do whatever it is they desire to do. And the reality is, we seem to be inching closer and closer to that type of society every day. And for some of us, we're headed in the wrong direction. Others are loving what they see, loving what they're experiencing, and are very, very excited about the lifting of any and all restraints that may occur in the not so distant future. And I sit from one day to the next asking myself, how did we get here? Where are we going? And from my perspective, based on my core values. Now, some of you might say, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. Well, it means something to me. And I know each and every one of you have core values that you strictly adhere to. But according to my core values, based on my perspective, this thing is, can I say it this way, seems to be headed toward going to hell in a handbasket. That's just the way I see it. And the reality is we've gotten to this place simply because people stop being influencers. People stop contributing to what is good, what is wholesome, and what is healthy that will result in our society becoming a good, healthy, wholesome society. You know, I was having a conversation with someone just the other day, and the subject came up with regards to children and how many children are suffering with mental illnesses and things of that nature, and children that are living with stress. And their little worlds are so complicated and been turned upside down. How did we get there? It's because of all of these liberties that have been unleashed upon society, and children are being forced to grow up too fast, or at the least they're being allowed to grow up too fast. They're having things thrown in their laps with regards to information that they're not mature enough to process. We are trying to create little adults from the time that babies leave the womb. Children ought to have the right to be children. They ought to have the right and the opportunity to live as carefree of a life as they possibly can until they reach adulthood. There are certain things that children should never be exposed to so early in life. They have access to everything. Foul language. It used to be a time that adults, if they were to use profanity, they would make sure that there were no children around to hear them expressing themselves in such manner. But now, not only will adults use profanity very loosely, very liberally, anywhere and in all places, but they are literally training children how to use such language. A 2-year-old shouldn't know how to cuss. I'm just saying. Now, some of you might say, well, what's the harm? They're just words. Well, to some of us, using that type of language is a demonstration that you have a very limited vocabulary. And I truly believe that we are limiting the vocabulary of our children when we place them in those kind of atmospheres, because children are just like sponges. They'll hear a thing, they'll file it in their memory bank, and I'm telling you, they can soak up a lot of stuff fast. And they can regurgitate things, they can repeat things, and it will literally blow your mind. You know, I'm always talking about my grandchildren. They're a very, very important part of my life. I love my grandchildren. I thank God for my grandchildren, and I'm yet fascinated by my grandchildren. My youngest grandson is 2 years old. And I discovered, or I was, my daughter let it be known to me some of the intelligence that she discovered her son had that she didn't even know about. She calls me and she said, "Dad, you've got to hear something." I said, "Okay." And you know how children could be, you know, they'll do something in one moment, do it so freely, but the minute you want them to do it for someone else, they'll say things in one setting, but the minute you want them to demonstrate their knowledge and ability to someone else, they clam up. Or they just refuse to do what you're expecting them to do. But nevertheless, I found out that my 2-year-old can name several species of dinosaurs. And I'm listening to him over the phone roll out a few. A T-Rex, a pterodactyl, or, you know, he's naming these things. And I said to my daughter, I said, "Where in the world did he learn that?" And she said, "Dad, I can't even tell you. I'm not sure." And I'm baffled. Of course, now I had to think, well, I guess he does watch videos. I guess he does watch cartoons and things of that nature. But, you know, how in the world does a 2-year-old learn to pronounce these dinosaur species by name? And when he was doing that, I told my daughter, I said, "He's got one up on Pawpaw, because I couldn't tell you one thing about a dinosaur, their species or whatever." I'm thinking dinosaur. You remember the big green symbol on the Sinclair gas station sign? That's probably the best I can do. I'm like, "Oh, wow." I said, "It's amazing to me how much knowledge he's soaking up." Then she goes on to tell me that every morning when she drops him off at his babysitter's, they pass by a construction site. And every morning when they would pass by the construction site, my 2-year-old grandson would be saying excavator. And my daughter thought he was saying escalator. And she would repeat it back to him, escalator. And he'd say, "No, excavator." And she was yet convinced that he was saying escalator. And she was trying to see if there was a place somewhere near where he was seeing an escalator through a window or something. That was not the case. It finally dawned on her. He was seeing the great big earth mover dump trucks that are used on construction sites that are called excavators. And when my daughter said it right, excavators, he said, "Yes, Mommy." I told my daughter, I said, "You have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. Why am I telling you all of this?" Some of you might be saying, "What does this have to do with anything?" Well, the point I'm trying to make here is we can only get the best out of people when we are willing to deposit productive and wonderful things into people. Our children will grow according to what we show. Think about it. What goes in, that's what will ultimately come out. When children are small, they are in their formidable years, that's when it's our responsibility to help shape and mold those little lives into being ultimately productive adults. But many of us have become lazy and negligent of our responsibility, and we've stopped making positive contributions with that in that regard. I mean, think about that. I truly believe that our world would be much better if we engage ourselves in making contributions, positive contributions that can influence others, that will result in our society becoming the better. Nowadays, a lot of children seem not to want any kind of formal education. No, let me take that back. That happens more so once children reach adolescence. That preteen, teenage period. They stop wanting formal education. They stop wanting to do the work. And one of the reasons why is because they have so many other things that draw their attention, that captivate and capture their mind and their thinking. And many of us as parents and grandparents have not wanted to be bothered with trying to help regulate those things. As a matter of fact, some of us are contributing more to the downfall of our society than we are to the building up of our society. Most individuals who say they desire change are waiting to see the majority of people change before they deem it safe for them to make any contributions toward change. If you are truly going to be a contributor to change, you really can't afford to allow how other people feel or react to influence whether or not you're going to be a change maker, a difference maker. Frankly, I believe that's what you've been placed in this earth to do, to be a difference maker. You know, and I know we just celebrated and observed Martin Luther King birthday this past Monday. And let me say this because, while it's still fresh on our minds, the thing that I admired most about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was that he was a trailblazer of change. Think about it. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a trailblazer of change. How so? He was bold. He was courageous. He dared to be different. He was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. He gave his life as a contribution toward change. That was the highest price he could have ever paid. Now, again, I acknowledge the fact that there were others who paid the high price of change along with Dr. King. And we honored them as well. Some of whom their names we will likely never know. It seems like the longer I live, the more I discover the names of people who were in the background, but who had a major hand in bringing about change for we who are African American people. They made major contributions. They gave their lives. They made major sacrifices. They dared to do what others would not do. And let me say this, they weren't always complimented for it. There were times that they were heavily criticized for it. There are people who yet today, rather than celebrate Dr. King, his accomplishments, the sacrifices that he made, they are yet finding reasons to criticize him, to criticize the movement, to criticize or to minimize his accomplishments. Of course, we know that everything that Dr. King did probably certain wasn't perfect. I'm quite sure that there were things that he did or did not do in his lifetime that before he left here, he wished he had done differently. We know that. But the reality is, just because he may not have done everything to your liking, I'm just saying as an individual, whoever this may apply to, there's no reason for him to be crucified for everything else that took place in his life. And some of the things that he's being criticized for are not necessarily based on facts, but they're based on opinions, rumors, and innuendos. You know, that's another problem that we have as a people as a whole. We are so reluctant to celebrate the accomplishments of other people. There are some people, some politicians, who I can name right now today that I don't necessarily agree with their politics, their opinions, or their philosophies. But yet there are some things about them that have been good, some things that they have done that have been positively productive, if you allow me to put it that way. So that being the case, watch this. I'm not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yes, the bathwater is dirty now, but there's no reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because the dirt came off the baby. And as I'm often reminded, anyone can change if they're willing to change. And then sometimes you have to stop and consider the fact that just because you have a position or an opinion doesn't make your position or opinion any more right than the next individual's position or opinion. That's a reality. And you certainly got to understand that everybody's not going to share your opinion, or your perspective on things. But instead of constantly trying to find the negative in the lives of other people who are trying to make an impact, instead of always criticizing, why don't we start to find the good, compliment the good, encourage that individual in that which is good, and even therein, you start to make a contribution toward helping to make things better. When you support people who are making efforts to make things better, you are therein making a major contribution to the improvement of our society. Stop waiting on everybody else to engage themselves, to start doing things of significance. Don't wait until you feel as though what you desire to do is acceptable or popular among other people. You see, while most people will say they desire change, very few are willing to pay the ultimate price for change. Few people, very few people, are willing to make lifetime contributions toward affecting positive change. Now, I think it's important that we all look introspectively, look within ourselves, and decide who we want to be, what do we want to do in terms of the impact we want to make on the people around us. I think we all need to look within ourselves and ask ourselves the question. Ask yourself this question: am I committed to being a difference maker? Do I have it in me to expend the energies that God has given me toward making a difference in my lifetime, and at least within the society or the circle in which you live? Ask yourself that question. I can tell you right now, if you know that God has put it in you to add value to the lives of other people and to improve the conditions of the society or the culture in which you live, then I truly believe that to a great degree, you should feel obligated to pour out of you what God has poured into you so that others can be blessed by the blessing that God has given you, by the blessing that God has even made you to be. Some of you are saying, who, me? Yes, you. You know, your value should not be quantified, if you will, or validated. That's the word I'm looking for. Simply by how many people know your name or how much you find yourself in the public view. It's not about popularity. I think that's the simplest way I can put it. It's not about how many people know your name. You know, because if you're only doing things for the sake of popularity or to have your name be known to the general public, you've got the wrong motivation. But if you truly desire to see change and a difference made in the society in which you live, you need to start in your small inner circle. And the center of that inner circle ought to be your home, your family, the lives that you know you have influence over, that you can make an impact on, leave an imprint on, little lives. And you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be little lives. There's some big lives, some grown lives that yet need positive influence. Now, the older the life is, the older the individual is, the more tact you're going to have to use in your attempt to influence. You can't just come at people biting their heads off. You got to learn how to use diplomacy, tactfulness, appeal to their sense of reason, show that you respect their intelligence, Don't bite their head off, but lovingly converse with them. You know, I think one effective way to do that is, instead of always telling people what they need to do, what they should do, how about asking them questions with regards to how they feel about certain things? You know, for instance, if you have a person in your family that you feel is just headed in the wrong direction, doing all kind of crazy things, always landing themselves in trouble, have a calm, intelligent, compassionate, sensitive conversation with that individual, and ask them questions like, hey, listen, have you ever considered what kind of impact you really want to make on life? I mean, just that calm, just that simple, just that tactful. Have that person to know and believe that you believe that they are very intelligent. And you don't have to use those words and say those things, because people know when you're patronizing them. And you shouldn't be patronizing them. But ask them. Ask them. You know. And see what the answer is. Now, notice how I asked that question. Have you considered what contributions or what kind of impact do you want to make on society? You as a person, as an individual. Now watch this. This is where you would totally mess it up. I'm going to use that same inquiry, but I'm going to not ask it. I'm going to more or less, how do I want to say this? I'm going to tell the individual more or less what they should do in considering what I just wrote out there. Watch this. Wrong approach. You need to think about what impact you need to leave on this society. You can be doing something better with your life. Right now, you're just good for nothing. You need to think about it. For real. You living here from one day to the next. How old are you? 40 what? What have you done? What can you say you've actually got to? That's no way to approach people. Well, Bishop, Dr. Cobbins, that might just be a demonstration of tough love. No, that's the quickest way to turn somebody off. And you might make them angry enough to where you might get a response that you wasn't expecting to get, or that you don't want to get. And once that door of communication has been slammed, it's hard to have it reopened. It's going to be hard for you to get it open. It's all about your approach. That's how you make contributions. That's how you influence the lives of others. Letitia, I agree. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I believe a lot of us can learn some very valuable lessons with regards to how we communicate with other people. So let me close here. My time is run out. But let me leave you with this question again. Keep this thought on your mind. In considering our present state of society, what contributions are you willing to make to affect change? What contributions are you presently making to affect change? And I want to remind you, as I did when I opened this discussion, is that all of us can make a positive impact. We all have something to contribute. The question is whether or not we are willing to make positive contributions. Well, that's it. That's all I have for today. I kind of stumbled through that a little bit because, again, for some reason or another, my brain seemed not to be waking up fully like I believe it needs to, maybe because I've had a lot on my mind. Then, too, when I first came down to get everything going today, once again, I ran into technical difficulties, and that can be so frustrating. But we worked through it. We got it done. Thank God. So again, if you can overlook my stumbling through some things and just hear the message that I was trying to convey as I was speaking with you, I know it at some point will begin to resonate with you. And I hope you will give careful consideration to the question of the day. What contributions are you making toward bettering this society in which we live? God bless y'all. I love you. We're praying for you. And I want you to remain encouraged. Yeah, things can get better if you choose to make things better. But remember, it all starts with you. Till next time, my desire as always is that you have a blessed, wonderful, and even prosperous rest of your day. God bless.